clearly say Canada is the 51st state of the United States, or Greenland is part of, should be the part of the United States, and Panama, U.S. will get back. This is not just something situations outside of the American continent. The United States intervened Panama as a self-defense. That is, so they occupied it, disbanded the army of the Panama, and now Panama only have something armed police, not military.
The United States of America is conducting military exercises in Panama Canal. This amid concerns of Trump administration over growing influence of China in the region, particularly in Panama. To discuss what this drill really means and how is U.S. trying to counter the Chinese moves in the region, I'm being joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He is a fellow at the Hudson Institute, a non-resident fellow at the Hudson Institute, joining me from Tokyo. Dr. Nagao, thank you so much for joining us. Let's begin with the military exercises itself. Coming at a time when we've seen growing engagement between Panama and the United States of America, does this mean that we are looking at increasing not just military exercises, engagement in the region to counter China by the American military and the American administration?
Okay, this is a very good question. Indeed, when we check the history of the United States, the U.S. policy towards the American continent, including Canada and to the southern tip of South America, Latin America, is different with American policy to other regions in the world. In this case, America feel more uncomfortable if the other powers intervene the situation in the American continent from north to south. So that's why when President Trump clearly say Canada is the 51st state of the United States, or Greenland is part of, should be the part of the United States, and Panama, U.S. will get back. This is not just something situations outside of the American continent. This American feel this region is the region of the American interest. So that's why more serious we should think, and America itself feel that this is serious too. But at the same time, President Trump's negotiation style is he chooses bilateral negotiation by using the intimidation. So when we hear the intimidation, of course everyone's surprised because intimidation level is very high, but at the same time still there is a space to slope through the negotiation. Because he tried to deal to get something generally. So that's why in case of Canada, he said, yes, Canada should be the 51st state of the United States, but it hasn't happened yet. Greenland case, Panama case, always same. So that's why when we hear the intimidation of the President Trump, yes, this is the demand, but at the same time, this is intimidation. And the real interest of the United States is a little bit different. That is important.
Right. You make a very important point about how there has been a very high-handed behavior by the Trump administration, but there was a threat also to reclaim the canal itself. Do you think the idea of allowing such military exercises is to ensure that the idea of reclaiming the canal is not something that President Trump really acts on?
Yes, that could happen because we can remember the history of the 1989 when U.S. intervened in Panama. That time, the dictator of the Panama smuggled the drugs to the United States, and this was the trigger of the United States to intervene in Panama as a self-defense. That is, so they occupied it, disbanded the army of the Panama, and now Panama only have something armed police, not military. So, view from this history, there is a possibility U.S. can intervene Panama militarily because it has happened in the past. So military exercise happened near Panama. Panama government remembers the history, and this is a very serious pressure for them, I think. But at the same time, because of this has intimidation. If the US really want to invade Panama, of course they can do any time without exercises. Exercises means that this is coercive diplomacy, so which is still within the diplomacy, not a war. So that's why this is making pressure toward Panama. But at the same time, still the space is in the diplomacy. Diplomatic negotiation can solve the issue just now. If the Panama concede enough, of course, U.S. will not intervene. And indeed, the Panama government already think this is a serious issue, so they have already conceded. For example, the U.S. Navy can go through the Panama Canal freely, and the company who owned some facility of the Panama Canal, which is originally the company in Hong Kong, but they cut relation with them because China's influence is pushing United States to intervene in this issue. So that's why the Panama tried to concede. This means that if Panama concede enough through the negotiation, it will through.
Right. Dr. Nagao, just we will talk about China and the Chinese influence, but before that, explain to us the bilateral agreement that allows Washington to use Panamanian air and naval bases for training without establishing its own bases there.
Yes, that is an important issue. Indeed, China is expanding their activity in the American continent. Panama is strategically important place. The American Navy was established and work based on the Alfred Mohan's theory, and he pointed out how important the choke point, including Panama. So Panama Canal is a vital area. U.S. Navy was divided in the Pacific side and Atlantic side, but if they control the Panama, two navy are one navy. But if separated, they cannot coordinate the move. This is far weaker than the connected, integrated navy. So that's why U.S. power rely on this connectivity through the choke point like Panama. So that is important for the United States. It is no doubt. View from China, if China need to tackle the United States, they want to get these places. So Panama is the target. Of course, it is clear. And recently, China is setting up many bases or checking the potential bases. So Greenland is part of it. Or in Cuba, there are a communication system for China on former Soviet Union's facility, but China control it. And in the Arctic, they negotiate with Russia to lease or access the Russian base to deploy the Chinese Navy in the Arctic. Because of this move, the United States start to feel this is a big threat. China will come to the Arctic, China will come to the Cuba, China is coming to the Panama. So this means that this is the area of the U.S. interest. This is the area of the American continent U.S. must deal with. That's why they start to say the Greenland, Canada, and Panama, all of these America controlled area, something like that. This is the logic, I think.
But these are very important points you make, Dr. Nagao. Let's just talk about the concerns. How concerning it is to see growing Chinese influence in the region, particularly what's your reading on Trump's claims that China really influences Panama and Panama Canal, where 40% of U.S. containers move from, and which holds 5% of world trade. That China holds a huge sway in that area, and Panama Canal, particularly when it comes to Panama itself. What's your reading?
Yes, China's move just now is just beginning. But just beginning is not ignorable. because military strategy is long-term strategy. For example, the
Yes.
one ship they try to build, generally some years, at least 5 years generally, they need to spend. So this means that 5 years later, what happened? 10 years later, what happened? It will relate to the current issue. So when China try to establish the small base, okay, what will happen 5 years later, 10 years later, 2 decades later? This kind of expectation or calculation is very important to decide the current strategy. So China is stepping up the effort to intervene the American continent. If we include China's move, economic move in the South America, Latin America, they are building the port, they are negotiating with Brazil, Argentina, and try to make them China's friends. All of these issues are concern for the United States. So 5 years later, 10 years later, 2 decades later, this is a concern for the United States. So now is the time to deal. Deal is not agreed in this case. Deal with China's expansion. So now is the time to tackle the China's activity is a matter of concern. So that's why the U.S. start to say. So U.S. Try to get all of the Canada, the Greenland, the Panama, these are the.
Is it a concern, Dr.
Just
Nagao?
now
Is that a concern? You just spoke about Greenland, and you're saying that they are trying to create bases in Central America as well. How concerning is that, and how real are those plans of China?
China, this is real. In case of the Arctic, this is real, of course.
Yeah,
Panama,
with Russia, it's real.
yeah, because the Arctic ice is melting and resources is surfacing. Surfaced, of course, under the sea, but surfacing for the development technology. And fishery is also the resources. And recently, Russia rely on China. This means that China can access the Arctic very actively because instead of the supporting Russia, Russia concedes some right to access the Arctic to China. So that's why in the Russian base, China will set up some area which can use for the Chinese Navy to deploy the forces in the Arctic. It will happen soon. So that's why in the Arctic, of course, it is serious. And that's why the Greenland and Canada matter is there. But at the same time, when we check the Latin America, what happened? China is buying the agriculture products of the Brazil or Argentina. The route where they go through Cape of Hope and Indian Ocean to come to China just now. But if they get the Panama Canal, of course they can use this too. So that's why for China, the Panama Canal is strategically important place. And in the Latin America, there are many countries who want to resist the United States influence because U.S. influence is very strong in these regions.
That's
But
right,
strong
actually.
influence means that people want to resist. So that's why it is natural. If China intervene, it looks like the people who do not like the United States want to cooperate with China. So that is a concerning point of the United States, and this is violating the U.S. interest. It is clear. So that's why, because of that, President Trump's character is he said something very clearly and honestly. So sometimes people feel this is too honest and rude, but it is his style. So that's why he say this is dangerous. China violate our interest, so we'll fight. And the U.S. strategy, indeed, last 249 years, U.S. hasn't allowed any rival to survive. So now China is a target, of course, but in the past, Soviet Union, Japan, or Germany, all of these are gone. Because the U.S. is a country to compete with other rivals to win and get superpower status. So that was the history of 249 years. If China survives, it will be the first miracle in the last 249 years. So this means that U.S. is serious. This is a competition, and the competitor is China. And China is intervening the U.S. interest. The U.S. will not ignore. That is very clear and natural view from their character.
Right. The other very important piece of news that has come in the past few days, we are looking at it, is that the United States of America is looking at a bill right now. It's in the Senate to protect the Taiwanese interests when it comes to China. From the undersea cables that are being sabotaged by China through their vessels, commercial vessels with various other flags from various other states, but used by China. How are you looking at that bill and the situation of what China really does when it comes to these undersea cables to disrupt communications when it comes to Taiwan, and maybe many other important points where you have a lot of data and network flowing through the undersea cables?
Yes, this is indeed very important because China want to win the war and occupy Taiwan or annex it Taiwan without the war. Yeah, or of course, this is the best way because strategy of Suntas, traditional advisor, but manual they made. China like this idea anyway as a manual, but in cutting the cable, it's directly linked with it. Because you can imagine people in Taiwan cut communication with other country. In this case, even if some government still keep the link with other countries, but common people cannot get access to the internet with the other country, or they cannot communicate with people in the other country. They are afraid. They are afraid the situation they are losing war with China. So China cut the cable and contain the Taiwan and blockade Taiwan and making the message you are losing. So resistance is meaningless.
Do you think, Dr. Nagao, Trump administration is actually going to come and back Taiwan should a situation arise where China really makes a move on Taiwan?
Of course, U.S. will support Taiwan, I believe, because Trump administration was administration also focusing on China as a rival. Last 249 years, the United States hasn't allowed any rival to survive. In this case, now China is rival, and the weak point of China is indeed Taiwan, because China's core interest is coastal cities, and to attack coastal cities, Taiwan is located in front of these coastal cities, Shanghai or Hong Kong, these cities. If the missile was set up in Taiwan anytime, from Taiwan, the United States side can attack these coastal cities, the vital core interest of China. So that's why this looks like the knife just in front of neck of China. So, if the United States seriously consider the competition with China is most important strategy for the United States, they must win the competition. In this case, they cannot give up Taiwan because this is knife in front of neck this is critical in the battle between U.S. and China. So that's why the U.S. will not abandon Taiwan. But if Taiwanese people choose China is better than the U.S. side, that is concern. So China say this is a peaceful annexation. But peaceful annexation through the coercive diplomacy could happen if they try to isolate Taiwanese people and making the image Taiwan is losing. So instead of that, you should consider China and accept China's occupation. This is peaceful. So that's why this is good. China try to persuade the Taiwanese people to join China. So that is dangerous for the United States. So cutting the cable and cutting the communication with other friends, this is a very important tool to persuade Taiwanese people to join China. This is that's why this is important. Yes.
Dr. Satoru Nagao, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Global. Thank you.